Q&A option. We will do our best to answer all of your questions. If needed, a live transcript of this event is now an available option and may be turned on by going to the bottom of your screen and selecting either live transcript or closed caption from the menu. We are all delighted to be here today to talk about parenting with cancer. My name is Jean Hartford-Todd, and I am a child life specialist at the Duke Cancer Center. I am joined by my colleagues as well as a patient and 2 caregivers. Hannah, would you start us off by sharing your full name, title, and location where you serve patients and families?
Okay, I caught myself quickly. Thanks, Jean. My name is Hannah Sasser, and I'm a child life specialist like Jean. My role is at the Duke Raleigh and Wake County clinics. So I'm located at Duke Raleigh, and I provide services to all Wake County clinics, including Macon Pond, Duke Cary, and Duke Raleigh.
Thank you, Hannah. Patrick, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Plumery. I'm a medical family therapist with Cancer Patient Support. And like Hannah said, primarily I work in Wake County, serving both the Duke Raleigh location and Duke Cary, and providing medical family therapy and facilitating support groups to all of our oncology patients.
Thank you, Patrick. And Jeff.
Hey, I'm Jeffrey Vaughan. Like Patrick, I'm one of our medical family therapists, and I work primarily with our teens and young adults. We have a program called Duke's Teen Young Adult Oncology Support Program, and I provide therapy mostly for patients between the ages of about 15 and 30. I'm kind of located primarily in Durham, but with the advent of virtual therapy, I've kind of seen people all over the place now. So thanks, Jean.
Thank you, Jeff. And to start with our family panelists, Julie, would you please share your full name, who in your family has cancer, who the family members are, and the ages of your children, please?
Hi, Jean. My name is Julie Fox, and my partner has stage 4 colorectal cancer. We have 2 children, and they are currently ages 11 and 6.
Thank you very much. And Jessica and David, if you would do the same.
I'm Jessica Wilkie, and
this is David Wilkie.
So David has stage 4 lung cancer, and we have 5 children. The oldest is 34, and then 31, 21, 9, and 7.
Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you all during the hour. I wanted to share a little bit more about the role of the child life specialist and how what we do is different than, say, our medical family therapists. Child life specialists are trained in child and teen development, and we have a focus on supporting families with children and teens in healthcare settings. So related to illness or injury, in our case, it is specifically to cancer. We use education, resources, activities, and play to support the needs of children and teens impacted by their own or a loved one's illness. And what I will say is the vast majority of child life specialists work in the pediatric setting with children who are ill or injured. And I am so pleased that at the Duke Cancer Center, we have child life specialists working with our adult oncology program so we can provide these services related to the needs of children and teens in the family. Child life services are available at any point during the illness. Hannah, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, just like as our conversation really focuses on parenting today, I really want to talk a little more about how child life specialists can work really closely with parents to provide helpful resources. As parents, we want to feel capable to meet the needs of our children, their physical needs, their educational needs, their emotional needs. And when we're faced with a difficult and emotional experience, such as a cancer diagnosis and treatment, we lose our confidence as parents and caregivers all of a sudden. We might feel as though we don't know what is the best thing to do. Like we kind of freeze in many ways because it's hard information for us to process as adults. So child life specialists can work so closely with parents to enable them to support their children and their family so that the family can support each other.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank
And Patrick, would you share about the medical family therapist role?
Yeah, sure. So family therapy is its own kind of mental health discipline in the same way that you might think about going to a community therapist, counselor, or even clinical social worker. But obviously located in the medical system, the doctor's office or a hospital, what we try and do is help families adapt to stress, right? And so when someone in the family gets diagnosed with cancer, it's helping the family adapt to the situation, to adjust to new demands, new maybe intense feelings, and hopefully help them do so in a way that's healthy and nurturing, and reinforce those strengths within the family unit themselves. I think that's more or less all of it, but it's pretty interesting work and we love what I do. Jeff, what about you? You have a little bit of a different position than I do.
It may be a lot different at times. So, thinking about working with teenagers, as Patrick said, our primary charge as medical family therapists is to work with adjustment and help the family adjust to these traumas, to what the changes that are going on. And thinking about the developmental stage of a teen to begin with, it's all about their current and kind of constant changes in their terms of their personality development. And so you have a child who's already in a pretty tumultuous and daily changing phase of life, and then cancer comes in and really turns things upside down. And so, I think working with teens who have a parent or a caregiver who's been diagnosed, family member who's been diagnosed, it presents some special challenges because there are already so many uncertainties in this person's life. Adding cancer to that just mixes things up even more.
Thank you both. Hannah, I'd like to ask you to respond to a question. It's really the building block question is, do we need to tell our children about the cancer diagnosis? Is there, and honestly, I think what's behind that, is there any way I can avoid this and not have to do this because it feels so overwhelming and scary?
Absolutely. And so I think this is, like you said, Jean, kind of that foundational piece where we're trying to figure out what to do next once we get that cancer diagnosis when there are children in the home. And so one thing we know for children and for growth and development, that open and honest communication can be helpful to children as they're learning new things, but also as they come across things that are challenging in life. It will help them cope with something difficult like an illness in the family. So I will answer confidently, yes, it is helpful to tell children in the family about a cancer diagnosis. What I also know is that parents won't feel like confident in their ability to do that or do that well, right? You will grapple with, how do I do that? What do I say? Because we want to protect our children from things that are difficult, from things that might cause worry, concern, or fear, and kind of beyond our own feelings. We want to protect them. We want them to be safe from things in our lives that might feel bad even to us. And so as we're dealing with the difficulties of a cancer diagnosis, we want to protect at the same time. Those are the things we do as parents. So yes, it is important to tell children and the family about the cancer diagnosis, but beyond that, using child life specialists and other resources to have the tools to do that in a way that you feel most confident and you feel like you're being helpful to your children.
Thank you. And Patrick, you are a co-leader for the Parenting with Cancer support group. Has this come up in the group and how have you addressed it?
Oh, it came up the first time. It's one of the first questions out the gate for most parents attending the group. So thank you for the group meets the first Monday of the month at 12 o'clock, and we, obviously we're doing everything virtually now. And the great part about that group is it's a number of people who attend who can understand on a very deep level what that struggle is like for a parent, to figure out, do I tell my child and children certain news, and then how do I do it? And so who better to ask than other parents? You know, we all know that the cancer care should be more than just the medical interventions. And so by trying to provide this group, this trusting, safe place where you can talk about the ups and the downs, the confusions of, you know, do I tell my children? What do I tell them? Or you might have children at different age groups, all kind of reacting differently to certain information, you know, to have that trusting, supportive community, if you will, to be able to bounce things off of and hopefully to get some empathy can be a big difference in this cancer journey.
Thank you so much.
So the next question I get after we get the question, do I tell my kids I have cancer? And again, yes, we should tell them, and we should use the C word, cancer, to describe that illness, so that they don't confuse that with other things. But that first question is, you know, the next question is, well, how do I tell them? And so again, like Patrick was saying, in the parenting group, we can get good information from other parents. So I'd love to ask the parents on our panel today. First, Jessica and David, do you mind telling us how you shared that information with your children about David's cancer diagnosis?
Sure.
So, there's no way around it. It's tough. I mean, it's not easy. And it's one of those things that we prayed on hard, and we discussed it amongst ourselves before we presented it to them. But it's, you know, it's like pulling the Band-Aid off. I mean, you just ripped it off, and you know, we told them this is the second time that we've gone through this. The first time, I would say the second time was probably a little easier than the first time. The first time when we found out there was a spot on my lung. I have stage 4 lung cancer, and in remission though, thank you, Jesus. But having them know right off the bat, so we don't have to, you know, keep the little talk under our breath or hide things from them. We, of course, was more worried about the 7-year-old and the 9-year-old. I think the older ones probably took it harder than the younger ones did. But
we waited just a little bit because we found out he was diagnosed on our son's 9th birthday, and so we clearly did not tell them that day.
The second time,
and then I talked to Hannah, and she sent me a lot of information that was very helpful. It was initially very overwhelming, but once I read through it and talked to Hannah, we had a plan. And we waited. Our anniversary is actually like the week after that, and so we were going on a trip. So we waited until we came back to tell them, so that we didn't tell them and then leave them with grandma,
right,
to deal with that. And then Hannah was wonderful and did a meeting with them with this cool little bubbles thing that explained what cancer is in a way that they could understand it. So it was very helpful, even though it initially seemed very overwhelming, to utilize the services that were offered. So we appreciate Hannah a lot.
absolutely.
It was a privilege to work with you guys and to see those aha moments when your younger children kind of was like, oh, I get it. This is why this is how this is happening. And this is the part of the body. And this is how treatments help. Those aha moments are so helpful for me to see. But as parents, for you to see your children understand it must feel good and empowering to you, so that when you have conversations later, you guys can talk openly and candidly and kind of understand each other in a much deeper way. So that education piece would be hard for parents to do on their own. And I feel so fortunate to be able to provide some tools so that kids can see it in a way that they understand it. And sometimes that's through play, and sometimes that's through looking at pictures, or maybe even seeing things that they haven't seen or experienced before in a hospital or clinic setting, so that they understand the safety around the patient, the parent, that people are there at the hospital and clinic caring for them as well. So thank you so much for taking advantage. I heard you say rip the Band-Aid off, right? So that is really hard, and that's kind of a good description. But we also want to be really gentle with children and providing that education in a way that they can understand as much as possible. And so using simplified language to do that, validating their feelings. We know what our feelings are and we can communicate that to each other pretty well, but children might have more difficulty sharing their feelings. We may see that through behaviors and we may want to discipline those behaviors, but ultimately we're going to realize that these are responses to something that they don't completely understand. And when they begin to understand, that behavior may change, relationships may feel stronger, and families can support each other better. Thank you for sharing your experience. As much as it's hard to do that with your kids, it might also be hard for you to share that here with us today. So I appreciate you being here and sharing that. Jean, in our field, we often observe something called protection of the youngest. Could you share a little bit about what that means?
Yes, this is something I observed one morning about 15 or 20 years ago. And since then, I have seen it play out again and again and again in the different families I work with. I had, I think, 4 consults, new patients to meet one morning. And I went into the first room, and I'm going to speed through this so it's not a long story. And they said, we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we've told the 4-year-old everything. He knows I have cancer. He knows I'm going to get these medicines, but we haven't told the 2-year-old anything. They're too young. And I did my thing, and we talked and we wrapped things up, and I went into the next room, and they said, well, we have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And we've told the 8-year-old everything, and he knows I have cancer, and he knows I'll be getting treatments, but we haven't told the 6-year-old because, you know, she's just kind of young and she just doesn't understand. So we haven't told her. And I kid you not, I went to the next room, 12 and 14 years old. I even had this happen once with a family where the kids were 21 and 24, where they said, well, we've told the 24-year-old everything, but we haven't told the 21-year-old. You know, he's just not old enough. And I realized that there's this protective mechanism that comes in where families protect the youngest child, and where they maybe assume incorrectly that the younger child can't understand. Just because they're not at the same developmental level as the older child. So I work hard when I encounter a family where they are being very protective of the younger child and withholding information to help them look at who that child is uniquely. How do they learn? How do they cope? How do they, you know, function in life? And more often than not, they're like, oh, yeah, we can do this. Especially once I start sharing what Hannah referenced as the simplified language around how we can explain this to even very young children. So that's not at all uncommon. I see it to this day.
Well, and that can be certainly something that happens across different families and different cultures, is that kind of instinct to protect the youngest, or, you know, to fall into those kind of old habits of what's my role in the family. And if I was always doing the same thing, well, then I'm going to keep doing the same thing, even though the context or the behavior or the information has changed. And so, you know, helping families adapt to that is kind of what we want to help them with, because it's a pretty big event that most families are going through, and it's reasonable to expect that feelings might be intense, or that relationships might get strained, or that chores might not get done. and how you deal with that as a family.
You know, it's interesting, Patrick. If I can chime in here for a second. So
Yeah.
This idea, Gene, of protectionism that you all been talking about, it ties in real directly with something else that I certainly see with teenagers, and that is this idea of what we call role confusion, right? And so that is simply the adolescent in a family, or the young adult, not really knowing where they fit in anymore, or what their jobs are, what their roles and their jobs are. And so the protectionism, that's a good starting point for this, because that often starts out the role confusion. That is to say, if a younger child is not told, but the older child is told, it creates this separation, and it pushes that older child into the adult camp. And so all of a sudden, they are the holder of that information. And that can happen when they are 8 years old, or 14 or 16, whatever. And then they're all automatically feeling more aligned with their parents than with their siblings. And so, you know, role confusion is something, again, in the world of working with adolescents, I see this all the time. A great way to explain that also is to say, you know, a 16-year-old may at one point need the support and nurture of a parent, much like a child, and then turn around and have to take a parent to the clinic the next day for a chemotherapy treatment. Or I've even seen older adolescents have to miss out on school to work to pay bills that parents can no longer pay as the parent goes through treatment. So role confusion, again, it's often kind of born out of this protection, the first or the last born protectionism, whatever, you know, that type of setup, and it creates a lot of confusion in a family. And so, you know, that's, again, that begs the question, how do you tell them? And then by extension, how much do you tell them? How do you keep them updated? That's kind of a lot to ask, but I'm wondering if, Julie, if we can kind of put you on for this one. So in terms of telling your kids, how did you tell them? How do you keep them updated? Kind of how does that go?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So our situation presented a bit different, I think, than David and Jessica's. We found out initially about cancer and an emergency room visit. So while we were waiting for a colonoscopy that had been scheduled, but so it was a very emotional time at our house. It was very shocking to us. This was not on our radar at all. And so our then 9-year-old, who is now 11, she asked me, "Does Dad have cancer?" And that was also shocking. So a shocking moment for me. It was a few days after we initially found out, and I had told the kids that Dad was sick. Um, and I had told them that he was not feeling up to playing, you know, that weekend. They had known that we were in the emergency room because I had to have someone pick them up from school. And so they knew that, but our daughter said that she knew that it was not the flu or something like that because she heard us crying so much. So it was one of those moments where, you know, where I realized that as much as you want to hide and protect your kids from some things, I mean, they are very observant and they know when there's a shift, right? And what's going on in the household. So we were doing what we thought was crying in private. And she was picking up on that. So, you know, when I look back at it, I guess I wish I could have taken away those moments of stress for her while she was trying to figure out what we were crying about and been a little bit more direct from the start. But I was very nervous about this word cancer, and I felt very overwhelmed. Now our son, who had just turned 5 when we found out, um, you know, I had told him that Dad was sick and that he wasn't going to be able, he's probably not going to feel up to playing with him, to playing tag with him and things like that, and that could, that would likely last a while. So we like to talk, and we still kind of do, even though he's growing out of it, but we like to talk about days and time and sleeps because he comprehends that a little bit better. So, you know, so we'll say it as, you know, one day is one sleep. And so, you know, he had asked how many sleeps, you know, and I said that we don't know how many sleeps, but it will probably be many sleeps before he feels up to it. I did tell him that he had cancer. And then a lot of questions followed that I was not prepared to answer about what that meant. And so I did tell him that we were looking for doctors that would hopefully help us all understand what it is that we need next as a family.
I'm curious,
Now,
Hannah.
I think you had Sorry,
No,
I hope
go
this
ahead.
answer isn't too long. I know you talked about updating. Did you want me to talk about updating?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah, so keeping the kids updated, thankfully I've had Jean who has helped me through this process. Now she wasn't there during the initial, right? During this initial time that I was just talking about, but I did find that resource about a month later, I think is when I connected with Jean. And one thing that Jean had I guess encouraged me to do was to have a calendar. And so keeping them updated, I'd have a calendar. I had a calendar that was posted in a place where everyone could see it. And we tried to be a little bit silly with it, We would have like Z's, a little face, and then Z's on days when we thought that my husband would be very tired and low energy. And then we had faces like just with a straight kind of smile when maybe we weren't sure, because those who are going through this know that it's so unpredictable. And one thing that has been hard is when kids need, and I know David and Jessica have probably been through this quite a bit, but when they feel like they need answers that we don't have. And that protection, trying to let them know what to expect. But how do we do that when we don't know what to expect? So the calendar has been helpful, and then the other thing is just updates. After each appointment, I give them an update, and not a lengthy one. But I'll give them a little bit of an update. I also remind them 3 days in advance of we have an appointment coming up. And so I'll say, and of course with my son, I'll say, in 2 sleeps, then, the next day we will be gone for a little bit, because our care is not local. The treatment's not local. So, and then that helps my daughter as well. And so we go through, if someone's going to pick them up at school that is not us, what that looks like, around what time we may be home. And I think that has helped them quite a bit. And then also I tell them, I try to tell them often, you can ask me anything that you want to ask anytime you want to ask. And then I brace myself.
I was going to say, right. And then you just kind of hold on, right? Absolutely. Julie, thank you so much. Those are the strategies are fantastic, right? And I think underlying all of that is, there's the content of what you're doing, the calendar and the language that you're using, but then there's the process, which is just that openness, right? And that willingness to be in that risky feeling space with your kids, which by definition creates so much safety for them, right? That you can tolerate that space, showing them that they too can tolerate that space. And I am curious though, and I'm going to throw this one to Hannah, if that's all right. So, you're talking a minute ago, Julie, about your 5-year-old and kind of at the younger end of explaining what's going on. So Hannah, do you think, is there an age that's too young, right? Is there a bottom limit in terms of sharing or what you might share with kids about cancer?
That is a great question. And Julie, I love the way you spoke your family's language by talking about it in sleeps. And in many ways, those are the ways you should think about having conversations in your home. How does your family communicate with each other? Incorporating that into that and thinking about their personalities and the dynamics of your home, recognizing routines for what they are and how they are important. But when we think about communication with children, we communicate with our children in different ways over the spectrum of their growth. When they are infants, when they are very tiny, we communicate with them through creating secure attachments, through holding them, through cooing, through engaging with eye contact. Those things are still going to be super important in the cancer experience. So ultimately, I say there is no age too young to start that conversation. Will all the conversations look very different? Yes. Because over the course of development, we want to meet children where they're at. That's where you can rely on a child life specialist to help you to know where they are. and what language would be most appropriate. A simple phrase that Jean and I use for a younger child, maybe a preschool or school-age child, is cancer is a spot of sickness in the body. It's not supposed to be there. It tries to spread to other parts of the body or grow bigger, and we don't want that to happen because it's not supposed to be in your mom or dad's body. And so helping them understand it in very simple terms, and then them use that fancy word for that spot of sickness, cancer, in the context that's appropriate, gives them empowerment to be able to communicate fully with family members, with other people who want to support you in the community. Maybe people are bringing you meals, or maybe people at a church or community event are talking about it, that they can feel like they understand what's happening in that conversation because you've given them those tools in words they can understand. So ultimately, I say there's no age really too small to have that conversation. Children learn and grow through secure attachments. And of course, attachments begins in infancy. When we create those secure attachments, it grows and builds over time so that we have trusting and secure relationships. And when we are honest with our children through a difficult circumstance like cancer, the trust continues to grow and you are all able to support each other in a more full and therapeutic way for everybody. It's so helpful. You as adults will know what it feels like to have your children want to support you, because kids are doers. They're smart, they're capable, and they're going to want to do things to show care and concern for you in a difficult time. So in many ways, once we communicate with them, the tables can turn and they can communicate and support and help us. Thanks for that question, Jeff. That was a really good one.
Well, yeah, and Jeff mentioned earlier as well about, you know, especially in certain age groups, how things are going along in a certain way, and then this news, this information can just change things kind of automatically, right? And so, you know, when you do tell the children about what's going on, or maybe there's an update, you know, is the medicine working as well as we had hoped? You know, that certainly can cause a lot of strong emotions with your children, regardless of their age. Even children ages 30 or 50. And so having those kind of talks, those conversations openly and honestly, like Jeff said, it does role model, even for children over the age of 18, that even though this is a delicate situation, it's sensitive, I can handle it, and therefore I trust that you can handle it as well, right? And so, you know, in some sense, there's this, how do I protect, or how do I keep my loved one from being sad or hurt? But if you don't bring them along into it, then the risk of being excluded, and they might even feel left out, right? And that can be even worse sometimes. You know, at least if you're in it, you're all in it together, right? And so I feel like that's one of the things that Jeff and I do as therapists is try and reinforce those strengths in the family, so that when there is a hiccup or a bump or some kind of new stress issue, you know, we want to identify those strengths. That how do families really adapt to an unforeseen or an unlikely stressor, and how do we adapt to that, right, together, and kind of almost bring those relationships, almost reinforcing them or making them stronger, and saying, yeah, this is unpleasant, this is not what we wanted, but we can adapt, we can do it together, right? And I feel like that kind of togetherness is the part that makes family therapy in the medical system so powerful, right?
Absolutely. That's unique that you get to work on it in that context of a family. Patrick, thanks for sharing. Jean, anything you want to add about ages?
I did. I wanted to circle back and really think about the older infants and toddlers who are potentially not yet talking, or maybe only talking one or two words. And I ask parents to think about how they talk to their children about other things. How would you talk to your child about the dump truck that just went by, or the fire truck? If a fire truck goes by while you're holding your 14-month-old, and you would say, oh, look, there's a fire truck. Do you hear the siren? Oh, it's so loud. Can you see the red light? Oh, the firemen are going to check on a fire. Then you can say to your 14-month-old, oh, do you notice my hair is gone? Yeah, my hair came out because of my cancer medicine, but it will grow back one day. And that kind of communication takes place in the moment. It's not something you necessarily prepare them for ahead of time. They don't have those skills yet. But you know, one thing we know is that most children develop their receptive language, meaning their ability to understand us talking to them, develops faster than their expressive language. So you can say to a 14-month-old, go get the truck, and they'll toddle over and grab the truck, but they could never say, I want to go get the truck, right? But they have the ability to understand. So I encourage families to talk to even the youngest kids in the simplest language.
Thank you, Jean. That is so very true. Jessica and David, a question for you. How did your kids respond to the news, and how did you support them emotionally as you all began to accept the news? What was their response?
So we have an array of children with different personalities. So our youngest, actually, she cried and was very affectionate. Like, she wanted hugs, she wanted to talk about it. Our 9-year-old, he is not that person. He's very much an introvert, very quiet. And so as soon as we were done talking, his response was, can I go now? Like, can I get up and go? He did not want to. And so we absolutely let him go, and just explained to him that when he was ready, or if he had questions, or when he had questions, that we would be happy to answer whatever we could. The older ones, we told them, obviously we can carry on, full on conversations with them because they're all 20 and up. We actually were more concerned about the middle one, the one who's 21. For her emotional stability. What we found across all of them is that they responded very well to us being 100% honest, just putting it all out on the table, and very much like Julie, we every time we have treatment or updated scans or whatever, we just update everyone.
Yep.
We also keep a very big calendar. My kids live by that calendar, the younger ones. I mean, they count out days, they know what's happening. So overall, everybody handled it a little differently, but we were able to, together as a family, talk about it in bits and pieces when they were ready. Everybody is, I hate to say it this way, and it's only been 6 months, but it's kind of like the norm now. And so we kind of just roll with it, like, oh, it's treatment day. Oh, dad has cancer that day, he has cancer treatment that day. So, that weekend we, might not be able to do blah, blah, blah. We try to schedule things around it. So we just keep them up to date. Our 9-year-old, he does go to counseling because it definitely increased his anxiety. And so we recognized that, the school recognized it. And so we just made sure that he had all the support that he needed to manage his anxiety. And it's funny when you say protect the youngest ones, we had her in counseling and she was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
She said, I don't need counseling. I'm good.
I think your counselor said.
Her counselor was like, I'm very comfortable letting her go.
She's good.
She just doesn't need it. And I was like, all right. And so we have them on speed dial in case, that ever changes, but she manages it much better.
And my wife is my caregiver, but Eva, our youngest, is probably my miniature caregiver. It's like she all the time. Daddy, how you feeling today? Or were you doing good today? Can I go get you something?
Yeah. So she's our little helper.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love hearing and getting to know your kids a little more through you, rather than just through KidsCAN. I wanted to share a bit here about the services that are available, Child Life Specialist services and our KidsCAN support group. Families can either ask their medical team to put in a referral for Child Life Specialist services or medical family therapy, or families can self-refer. And there will be a website at the end of the webinar that you can go to read more about it and get the contact information for self-referring. We will work with you at any point in the illness. I think commonly we're asked to provide support around key times. So a new diagnosis, if side effects are difficult, if you've stopped therapy and you're doing well, but you have some lingering side effects or late effects, sometimes kids have questions about that. Or most certainly if the cancer is progressing and it does look like there might be a hospice transition on the horizon, then we are available to be a part of that support. We also have our KidsCAN support group. It's for kids between the ages of 4 and 18 years old, currently being held virtually, but we are hoping to be able to schedule in some in-person meetings sooner rather than later. We use games and activities to help kids talk about living with cancer, to learn about cancer, treatments, side effects, and to talk to their peers about their common experiences and what that is like. And I wonder, Julie, would you be, I see David and Jessica, I see you two lighting up, but I was going to ask Julie to share your kids' experience with KidsCAN and what that has been like for your family.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. When I think about what has been helpful for our family, KidsCAN is one of the things that definitely pops up. We've been fortunate that they started KidsCAN when we were during the chemoradiation treatment, and we were actually down in Durham and trying to navigate that, which was very difficult. And they started down there. They the way that I think when I think about KidsCAN, the way that KidsCAN like weaves like normal, right? Normal activities, normal feelings, normal discussion in with also with cancer and with what they're going through right now. It's just a beautiful. I'm usually doing something in the kitchen while KidsCAN is going on, and I stay close. My little one sometimes doesn't know how to unmute himself or mute himself back, and so I stay close by and listen. Where my older daughter, who is now 11, she has very much enjoyed the space that she gets separately. And one thing, when I know a few people talked about this, but I remember Jeff talking a little bit about the role confusion, and everyone was talking about protecting, right? This protection of the youngest child. My daughter feels very protective. Our 11-year-old feels very protective of our 6-year-old, and she'll even say, "Why are you telling Brooks that?" And so it has been also nice for her to have a separate space where she can talk about this with, with a different group, and not be so concerned about what she is saying in front of Brooks. So while I try to encourage her, that we're all open books and we're all sharing, she does feel very protective of that, of him. So but my daughter, who loves soccer, she's all in on soccer, she's skipped soccer practice to go to KidsCAN, knowing that she then wouldn't start in the game. So that says a lot. And she made that decision. I presented it to her and I said, "This is the deal. If you miss soccer, if that is a choice you make, you won't start in the game this weekend." And she took it. And they enjoy hearing from other people. I know that one thing that my daughter has said is that it's so nice to be in a space where she knows that everybody knows a little bit about how you feel, but you don't have to say it if you don't want to. And that is very, see, I could get teary just thinking about that. That is heartwarming stuff for us parents. It's also nice for them to have a space that doesn't involve me, because one thing on my mind is I just want them to be able to say anything that they would like to say and not worry about how I feel about it. So KidsCAN has been wonderful, and we've been very thankful that it's been virtual since we are hours away.
Thank you so much, Julie. And you're right, that protection can go both ways. We know that kids try to protect their parents, often as much as parents try to protect the children. And so, it is great that they have a space to just think what they want to think and say what they'd like to say. I would love to hear also from you, David and Jessica, about KidsCAN and what that has meant for your family.
Okay, so it's amazing.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. Same, Julie, like our kids will choose KidsCAN over most anything else that comes up. It's not a situation of when they get home and they're getting their stuff and they want to go play. And I'm like, oh, you have KidsCAN tonight. And then they're like, oh, well, let me go tell so-and-so I can't play. Or they, well, let's get through dinner. Let's get these things. They get excited when they get their package on the porch. And they always want to read the book that comes in it the minute that they open the package, because it usually comes with the book. All the activities have been things that they loved. We did the family one where we made the stuff with Legos, and it was hilarious for one. But it was so much fun. It was so much fun. And I know we're probably running out of time, but just a plug on all the things. We use every resource that you all have. So we've been to the parent group. I've done the caregiver group. We have signed our kids up for Camp Kesem. And so we actually just got a phone call that I have to call back and get all the details, but they're both signed up for the camp this summer. And I don't think we would have been able to do this as easily without these resources. I think I would have felt like maybe I was drowning. I also use the therapist there. It is very helpful, just because it's like Julie said, it's people who understand what you're going through. You have that unfortunate mutual connection. And so you can get a lot out of it and listen to other people and not have to say anything because you know exactly how it feels, or to say, hey, I know exactly how it feels. So, and all those groups have something different to offer. So KidsCAN and beyond, we recommend any and all the resources that y'all have to offer.
So Jessica, that's about the best plug we could get. That's awesome for all the services. That's perfect. No, thank you so much, truly. So we had a question come in, and I'll start with Hannah, and then we can pitch this to the parents. What advice would you have for parents thinking about their kids joining KidsCAN? I think of support groups sometimes being really heavy or sad, so I've been going back and forth in deciding about this group for them. So Hannah, do you want to start off with a response, and then maybe we can hear from the parents on that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jean, pipe in after me with some good examples or a good response. KidsCAN is a space especially for kids. Of course, we incorporate parents into what we're doing so they understand what we're teaching, what we're learning together, but it is a space where kids can be with other kids in the context of something they have in common that they don't have in common with their peers at school or on the soccer team. There's a sense of understanding that you don't have to explain yourself, or it doesn't have to feel hard because somebody just doesn't get me. All of these kids are experiencing the challenges of treatment, the challenges of just learning that cancer has progressed, and they support each other in the context of that. So it is their space, and it's a warm space. I definitely leave KidsCAN even when we talk about difficult things like what is cancer. But I leave KidsCAN with a smile because kids are learning together, they're being open with one another, and they're having the opportunity to share their experience in a way that is true to them and their age. We do divide into age groups right now, a younger age group and an older age group, and we have a separate teen group so that kids can feel like they're in a group with people who do truly understand kind of what they are going through at their ages. But I feel like it gives them a space, and I feel like the topics can be very heavy, especially when we maybe lose a parent to cancer and we want to talk openly and reflect on that. But it's important that we're supporting them. And when conversations have been honest to this point, KidsCAN, feels like a safe place to bring those thoughts and concerns. It usually is happy, fun, and we laugh a lot. Jean, what else do you have to add? You have so many years of experience with KidsCAN. I think we're getting close to our 15th year of KidsCAN.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would just echo what you said, that KidsCAN, for the most part, I think is fun, right? And then we have our serious moments, and the kids, if they take KidsCAN to that serious place, it's because they want to. If only one child wants to, it's a very short, serious moment. But if another child wants to join in, then it might be a slightly longer, serious moment. And even those serious moments can be somewhat casual, because these kids seem ready to talk and to share and to have that space and use it. So I think that's what I would say.
And I feel so confident as a child life specialist when I'm with KidsCAN and we're surrounded by our medical family therapist, when I have the support of Jean as another child life specialist, to understand how kids are responding to things, if they need additional support. So at KidsCAN, we're really supported by a great team of professionals, educators, and mental health professionals to really support them as they're responding to things that might be difficult to them. So it's a great warm place, and it's a safe place because we have just the greatest people here that I work with that are helping kids through a difficult time. That's a great question, because it can feel heavy.
I wonder if Julie or David and Jessica, would you speak to if you perceived that heaviness and how it impacted your children?
Yeah, I definitely will. So I would, without hesitation, recommend KidsCAN for kids that are going through this. Yeah, so there has been some heaviness. It is wild to me how I've heard the heaviness, and it has felt so much heavier to me as I'm bracing than what my kids experienced. And there was a particular session that they both just felt bad for another, for some other children going through a loss. But such a rich, sweet conversation that we had that evening about it. And one thing I know about KidsCAN that both of them have expressed in their own way is that it's so nice to feel, to feel like you're not normal, but then go to this place where people, where everyone has that feeling, right? But everyone can kind of come together and they talk about it in a way that feels more normal. So it's the space that they have. They can feel like there's a community here, right? And they go to school and they talk about school, like my daughter has used the word oddball. Right? She feels like an oddball because she feels unique in the way that she is going through this and has this heaviness that she carries that others don't. And so how does she navigate, this space and life with this heaviness that she doesn't want to share with people all the time? But she can share, and she said she can share it if she wants to, and then she can offer other people support if she wants to. And she said that both of those things matter a lot to her.
Thank you so much, Julie. Too.
Okay. Should we go to the last question?
Sure.
Last question. What is the one thing, both of you, David and Jessica and Julie, what is the one thing that you believe helped your kids cope with learning about the cancer diagnosis? the one thing that you can pinpoint. And if it's not one, maybe one or two, but narrow it down to what has worked for your family.
You mean when we first told them?
Or since we told them.
You're muted, Hannah.
Sorry, I think just in general, just maybe it was a program you participated in, or maybe it was just deciding to be honest. What's the one or two things that really has helped your family kind of cope across? We've talked about a lot of great things today, about calendars, about predictability,
Yes.
about communication.
That call that they had with you with the bubbles and the straw in the cup
Yep.
was probably the kickoff
Yep.
to their understanding
So
about
that was me
cancer.
making the learning easy for them to understand
That's right.
through play
Yeah.
and visuals.
And
So
that was
again,
before they ever joined a group of anything. So that one-on-one was very helpful when we were explaining, you know, the journey ahead. As little as we knew about it, I was able to say, but we have this wonderful lady, her name is Hannah, and she's your person. And so she'll answer questions. She's willing to meet with you and answer these questions that we maybe can't answer, or you can even ask her stuff if you're not comfortable to ask us. And they really appreciated that. And then this is just in something so terrible, because cancer is terrible. Through the Holt Foundation, we were able to go to an NC State football game and sit in Torrey Holt's seats because of y'all. And we were on the front. It's the closest we've ever been. That was an amazing experience. Our kids got to
Kids
go.
loved it.
They felt really special.
They did.
Because we got to park in the front. We got his parking spot.
I felt
He
special.
felt special.
You are special, and that's the importance of making memories. And we focus on that as well. The importance of making memories together is even more important on a daily basis when you've experienced a cancer diagnosis. And so we do focus on that as child life specialists in our KidsCAN programming.
The honesty. And then just through this whole experience, we have reprioritized our life.
Oh yeah.
And we go on trips and we try to make fun memory things, even if they're small. I mean, it has really, all of it has just been amazing.
Yeah, that's
Thank
awesome.
you, everybody.
Yeah,
on this.
everybody. Yep.
Yeah. And I do like to say that we are here for the children in your families, that they can have a person through this experience. And then a step further from that is it's okay to say, I don't know the answer to the question. Kids ask great questions. Sometimes I even say that. And when I don't know the answer, I have a great team of physicians or nurses or people I can ask. They're really good questions that sometimes exceed adult knowledge, because kids ask great questions and we want them to feel empowered to ask those questions. Julie, did you have one or two things that you wanted to share, your top most helpful thing in learning about the cancer diagnosis?
Sure. Well, when I think about it, what has helped them cope the most comes actually from the help that I've gotten from you all at Duke. So, if it's the bubbles with Jean, right? Which is actually how I introduced KidsCAN, was I said, you remember Jean? And my little one said, with the bubbles? And I said, yes, with the bubbles, which it really did help them understand what was going on in a way that was just beautiful, perfect. But and then they were definitely on board with trying out KidsCAN, and that is how I presented it to them. Of, well, hey, it's going to be Jean and some other kids, and then some other people want to try it out. And that's all I told them, and they've loved it. But the encouragement, I think that because I have had these resources, right, where I can check in. I mean, I feel like Jean has been my person. I can just I can call her. I feel like I could call her at any time or email her and say, please, I have a question. She's been like a sounding board. I remember a place in Baltimore. I mean, I can tell you exactly where I was walking when I called Jean frantically because I needed help with how to let my kids know that the cancer had progressed and we were on a different path, you know. And so when I think about what has helped them cope, I do think about the honest and open communication that we have as a family, and letting myself be very raw in front of them and not taking this, even though I had to go against what some of my family members wanted me to do, which is to protect and shield, but instead to have the courage to just be open with them and let them see all the good, the bad, and the ugly, which they do. And honestly, the resources at at Duke have really helped me do that, right? And figure this out. I also I love that it's open along this journey too. So I don't feel like I have to ask all my questions to anyone at one time. I feel like I feel like I'm part of this community here and that I have a lot of support. So thank you. And my kids, thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank our panelists today for sharing their experiences and their knowledge, and encourage everyone to take advantage of the remaining offerings throughout Survivorship Day today. Remember that our services are available to you and your family, from the suspicion of diagnosis all the way through survivorship, and even during circumstances surrounding end of life. And so wish you guys well. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope our time was worth your investment.
Thank you.